got breaking news in the Jussie Smollett trial. A verdict has not only been reached, it has now been announced. Sarah Seidner, you have the details.
That's right. Jussie Smollett, a jury has found that he is guilty of 5 of 6 counts of disorderly conduct. Now, of those 5 counts, I'm just going to sort of give you a little bit of what the law is there and what he was charged with and what he is now convicted of. On count 1, it was making a false police report that he was a victim of a hate crime to Officer Babe, one of the officers that took that report. The second count, they found him guilty of making a false police report that he was a victim of a battery to that same officer. The third count, the jury found that he was guilty of making a false police report as the victim of a hate crime to another detective. And then on count 4, guilty of making a false police report that he was a victim of a battery to that same detective, Kimberly Murray. Count 5, they found him guilty again. Same thing, making a false police report, this time that he was a victim of a battery again to that same police officer. And then on count 6, that is the only count that the jury found him not guilty, and that was for making a false police report that he was a victim of an aggravated battery. So what we now know is that the judge will have to decide what his sentence is. We saw Jussie Smollett coming into court, as he has done every single day of this trial, surrounded by a large group of his family and supporters. He is now been found guilty by a jury of his peers here in Chicago. Again, 5 of 6 counts he's been found guilty on. And so a judge will have to decide what that punishment will be, because there is a range here, and the judge has great discretion to decide what he should face. The range is up to 3 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. The judge could decide all manner of things. He could decide that he just pays a fine. He could decide he doesn't spend not a day in jail. This will all be up now to the judge, looking at all of the factors in this case, whether there are aggravating factors or not. One of the factors the judge will certainly look at is something that the prosecutors brought up, not only that this jury has found him guilty of 5 of 6 counts of disorderly conduct, but also whether or not he lied on the stand, for example, because in this case it is all about a lie. It's about a false report to police. It could also be about one of the potential aggravating factors, lying while on the stand as well. And so the judge will weigh all of that and then decide what his punishment may be in this case. As you know, if you hadn't heard of this case, it would be a surprise, because back in January of 2019, everyone around the country and even the world was talking about this alleged hate crime that he said was perpetrated on him. A jury decided that turned out to be a lie. Wolf?
Yeah, they certainly did. 5 of 6 counts. Guilty as charged. Stand by. I want to bring in CNN legal analyst Laura Coates and CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Laura, let me start with you. What's your reaction?
You know, this case is more than just about the actual counts of this particular trial. It also is about how the city of Chicago felt as though he had exploited these very, very difficult topics of hate crimes, homophobia, racism, and tried to exploit and capitalize that, they say, for publicity and notoriety. And it seems that the jury actually concluded the same. And when you think about hate crimes, which you know have been on the rise in this country over the past several years, part of the frustration of the special prosecutor and the jurisdiction was that people are likely to be less believed if they are to report these falsehoods, that there would be some way of a credibility issue for future victims, unfortunately, of hate crimes, that if you provide this information, if you say these hoaxes, then you lessen the credibility of future victims of hate crime, which of course nobody wants to happen, let alone the actual crime occurring. So the jury has spoken quite definitively on this issue to say that they will not tolerate and think it was a waste of the resource of taxpayer dollars to try to engage in this behavior.
What do you think, Joey? How serious is this conviction on 5 counts of disorderly conduct?
Yeah, it's problematic for him in a number of ways. The first of which is that although, as Sarah indicated, he faces a maximum of 3 years, the judge can give him probation. But as she also indicated, what happens is when you testify in a case, the judge now gets a sense of what you said. Now, what Jussie Smollett said was resoundingly rejected by that jury. The jury did not buy what he was selling. That's not lost upon a judge, because what that means is that you came into that judge's courtroom and you fabricated. Why do I add that in part to what I'm saying? I'm saying that because although the maximum is 3 years and the judge can give him probation, he now, that is a defendant, Mr. Smollett, now a convicted felon, I do believe has exposed himself to jail time. And I think this was a case many have said about credibility. I would disagree. I think it transcended credibility. It went more to whether or not your facts make sense. Briefly stated, Wolf, the things that he was saying just, did fit a narrative that was hard to believe. In the event that police have footage of you being at that particular location prior to that particular day, you have to kind of explain it. It's very difficult to give the indication that you had nothing to do with this when you're kind of seen at that location. It's kind of difficult when there's a $3,500 check that you've allegedly paid these brothers to say it was just nutrition. It's kind of difficult when the police say, sir, give me your phone because I just want to check it out, and you say no, to say, well, you know what? I didn't trust the police, or I don't want any DNA, so I'll stop there. But I'm just saying the facts were very compelling, and the narrative he was telling in terms of this hate crime, and really factually, it just didn't make sense with respect to all the facts that really went against him. And so I think the jury did their job, right? We're thankful for a jury system in this country that can listen to facts, evidence, and really reach conclusions. That's what they did. He's guilty, and now he'll face sentencing.
And Laura, he's not only convicted of lying to police officers in the course of the investigation, but also, he's not formally charged, but I'm sure the judge will have to consider the fact that he was, at least according to the jury, lying under oath during the course of the trial.
And remember, he took the stand in his own defense. I mean, he was prepared to speak and be contrary to what the prosecution witnesses said, including those two brothers who say that they were the ones paid to commit this hoax in defiance of what we know to be logical and our understanding of hate crimes in this country in particular, and to have this hoax as if it was some sort of a publicity scam. And so him taking the stand led to his exposure in the way that Joey has spoken about. It leads to the exposure, of course, of a judge now looking at you and taking every single word you say and adding it against and assessing it against the credibility of other witnesses. And remember, he also is an actor. I mean, our colleague Paul Callan spoke about this issue quite eloquently last week, and the notion of, listen, if somebody were to take the stand, the jury is well aware and they're sizing up the person for credibility. They're wondering about the person's demeanor, their presentation, the way in which they defend themselves. They're going to expect a particularly polished presentation, which cuts against you, because if they believe you are constructing a narrative in a case that is defined by the construction of a false narrative, it could actually weigh against you. And so it's probably a very big calculated strategy for them. And now we may see a miscalculation, of course, by the defense team to call him to the stand. But you're talking about a case that, remember, they had initially dismissed these charges. He had forfeited a bail. He had done community service. A special prosecutor was appointed to say, no, we don't agree, and look into this notion of somebody having a case dismissed. It was viewed as celebrity privilege going awry. Here, the jury has responded to all of these factors. And as Joey said, if it doesn't add up, if the prosecution is able to meet their burden, which here they did in 5 out of 6, well, the jury has spoken, and the judge must abide by that in his or her presentation of the sentence.
Sarah, you've been covering the trial the whole time over there. First of all, what's the mood like on the ground? Does this verdict, guilty on 5 of 6 counts, come as a surprise?
It does not, only in that when you look at what the evidence was, there were surveillance videos. There were hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of videos that police went through. Some of those were brought into this case. There was testimony from these two brothers, which I think is very significant, because the two brothers, the Osundario brothers, clearly knew him. There was clearly a relationship. He had, one of them was his trainer. And to have them take the stand was extremely significant and say, look, we did do this. We were wrong. We did this, but we were told to do this. We were doing this because we were given $3,500, and we were told, not to hurt him that bad, just rough him up a little bit. There was also the video with the noose, and that video really came back, I think, in the end to bite Jussie Smollett, in that police came to him and they had, and you're seeing seeing it there. They had their body cams on when he was reporting what had happened to him. And you see the noose there, you see it sort of around his neck, it's kind of disheveled. The prosecution pointing out, hey, it's very disheveled there, but when we first saw it, it wasn't disheveled. What happened? Did you take it off and put it down and then put it back on and mess it up so it looked like a worse crime, that someone was trying to like pull it and lynch you? And he said, well, yes, I took it off, but it was because I put it back on for police because I was told by a colleague that I shouldn't have messed with the evidence, that I shouldn't have tampered with it, so I put it back on. He said the exact opposite during an interview to GMA when he sat down with Robin Roberts. He told everyone in the world on camera that he indeed had never taken it off. So there were lots of inconsistencies that were pointed out in this case. But one last thing, one of the things that has really upset folks in the Chicago area about this is the amount of time the police and money the police spent on trying to solve this crime that a jury has said is a hoax, when there are so many other crimes and things that are happening in this city that people feel like the police should be concentrating on, i.e. the shootings and murders.